You're listening to the Governor's Podcast, which is hosted by school governors, for school governors, and for all involved in or impacted by education governance. On the Governor's Podcast, we have open, honest, and transparent discussions about governance in the UK education sector, sharing and providing insights into the realities of entering the boardroom, sitting around the governing board table, and leaning in.
Hello, I'm Sharon Warmington and I support schools and academies as a governor, governance practitioner and a clerk. I'm also the CEO of the National Black Governors Network, supporting the education sector in diversifying their governing boards.
And it's Olivia D. Hind here, an under 30, unapologetically black female who is changing the face and space of school governance.
And you're listening to the Governor's Podcast. Okay, let's get into today's topic.
Do you tell people you're a school governor?
People generally?
Yeah, like if someone was to ask you what it is that you do you include that as something that you do?
It depends on the context or the situation, I suppose, because when people usually ask you what you do, they're usually referring to your day job or your business or something like that. But what I tend to do, because I wear so many different hats, I will sort of summarize things. So I will say that I work in governance. I'm a governance practitioner.
Okay.
And I will further explain, again, depending on the audience, to say I'm a school governor, I clerk, I deliver external reviews of governance. So, I will do things like that. But to specifically say, in answer to a question directed at me, that I'm a governor, rarely, I would say.
So then at what point does it come up? At what point do you share that that's something within? Because I would put that in in the region of things you do professionally, if it comes out in conversation.
Well, exactly.
But then I think it's because it's something I've mentioned to my students.
Oh, right, okay.
So if my students present to me a scenario, something that's happened for them at school, because of the position I'm in, I listen to them and I understand their perspective or their viewpoint as the student. But because I'm a governor, I try and explain things to them on the side of the teacher,
right,
or the school structure, or give them something to think about.
View.
Yeah, as to why they may not have been able to do something this way, or why things are this way. I have a year 9 student who almost every week for the past 2 months that I've seen her, every session I've seen her in the last couple of months, she says, oh, there's so many tests. And I hear the frustrations of what she's saying, and I give her an ear so that she can vent and get it off her chest. But then I say to her, because of what's happened over the last 12 months, schools are really trying to have some performance markers. The assessments are for them to have some data to know how their students are performing, given the remote learning, the home learning, the in-school, the out-of-school,
Yeah.
So at that point, I will say, because I'm a school governor, this is what I understand from schools this side.
Yeah.
So it comes up in a very specific situation. But I think the reason why this is such an important thing to talk about, because when you think of something like governor recruitment and how you get people to become governors, if no one ever talks about them being a governor,
absolutely,
how do you let people know? Because governance is I don't want to call it an industry in itself, because it's everywhere. It feeds into every sector, every industry, every aspect of business, all layers. And so I'm just thinking, you hear people talk about the usual jobs and
or
professionals.
professions. Yeah,
exactly.
that is so
but
true.
no one
Never thought
really
about it.
leads with being a governor. So therefore, when they do hear about it, it's like, oh, I've never heard of that before.
Or
how do I do that?
Yeah.
Or
and that's one of the reasons
where
probably
do I start?
why you don't get people volunteering, because the
Yeah.
only time you hear about it
Yes.
is either if you're on the receiving end of having to face governors, if you're a parent and you're raising a complaint or anything like that, or when the governing body is looking for governors, and then it's like almost this alien thing. What's a governor? And you've got to re-explain it in every situation. Whereas you're right, if you talked about it more, because you know, do you stop being a governor once the meeting is over and then you go back to normal life?
Yeah, exactly. Is it just an add-on, or is it very much embedded within who you are and what you do? I think it's something for people to think about.
It is, because I'm in education on the periphery, not in terms of operationally teaching or anything like that, but because a lot of my work is in the education sector, then I'm surrounded by people who are governors or who are clerks
or know about
or both.
it. Yeah.
If I was working in a traditional job organisation that had no link to the education sector, would I even know?
Then I think it speaks to how organizations view it, because, you know, when people become governors and they have to navigate their work commitments around governor meetings and having to speak specifically to their line manager about how this is beneficial for them on their personal or professional development journey and stuff. Whereas if everyone is aware of governance and governance in schools specifically, then it becomes, you know, like how people are aware of charities and you see all these events take place on TV and volunteers and they're oversubscribed with volunteers.
Yeah.
But in governance, in school governance, you're not oversubscribed in volunteers because it's not talked about. Any event that's taking, you think of it being the summer now, and events taking place all across the summer, all these outdoor events or whatever, people will volunteer to go to them of all ages, all backgrounds, because it's there.
Well,
I see it.
Yeah, I recently saw, because we're based in Birmingham and very close to where the Commonwealth Games will be in 2022.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's 2022. I shouldn't say that. I'm from Birmingham and don't know when the Commonwealth Games are going to be here.
I don't know.
But they are looking for thousands of volunteers.
And they'll probably get them.
And they will get them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, from all ages, all walks of life, all of that. Because there is an understanding of what the Commonwealth Games is about.
It's something exciting. It's talked about. There's build up to it.
Absolutely.
You know, it's centered around, you know, sports and things like that. So
but
very much what people talk about and engage with on a daily basis. But you go to school every day.
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that I say when I talk about recruiting now, especially for more diverse governors. The things that I say to schools is, you know, you've got to create a campaign. You can't just do one ad or a notice on the website and expect people to you know, be knocking your door down, because it doesn't work like that. So you've got to, you know, just like TV adverts, you don't you never see one, and you rarely remember seeing the first one.
The first time you saw it,
because it's only when you've seen it at least 2 or 3 times that the recognition
stick. People sing along to ads. Like I don't even watch TV, and I'll remember something, the jingle or something like that, because it's played that many times. Because I mean, it comes out in my, as part of my tutoring, one of the main things I say to my students is the best way to learn something is repetition. Repetition.
So when you're looking, and this is directly to schools now, when you're looking, especially for diverse governors, you've got to create a campaign.
Yes.
You can't just do one advert and think, oh, well, that didn't work, or we've tried.
No, it's not
because
enough.
It doesn't, and by diverse, I'm not just talking about race, I am talking about age especially. especially.
Yeah.
And I'll go as far as to say to schools, if you haven't got an IG account, then you've got to get an Instagram account, then you've got to get one, because schools have to meet the audience where the audience is at, not where you want them to be.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because in a recent local governing body meeting that I attended, so this would have been pre the half term in the summer term, I mentioned this. I asked the question because they were talking about schools and I think meeting PAN numbers and things like that, and I asked the question, pupil something
mission
number. Pupil admission number. Basically, the number of students that you can take on in any given academic year, right? So I know what it means, but it's just the actual abbreviation. I know. I'm sorry, listeners. So I was basically saying, have you considered that the fact that Generation Alpha are entering secondary school this academic year, if that's a
next academic year.
Well, next academic year. Yeah, well, yes, September 2021.
Yeah.
So if there's a new generation of people, population, characteristics and everything entering secondary education, then you have to factor in the new generation of parents as well. So you're going to have from September 2021 onwards, you're going to have more parents that are in the millennial category than they are Gen X.
Yes.
So it's about looking at that. So then when you're looking at how to entice people to be attracted to come into your school, and I know this was on a parent context, you've got to think about how they like to be communicated to. Not how you've always communicated with parents.
Yeah, that's got to stop.
But where are those millennial parents? And stop thinking that 16 and 17-year-olds are millennials. No. They are not. They are not. Not everyone younger than 40 is not a millennial. So just let me just say that now, because I saw that pop up on Facebook. Oh, my daughter's a millennial. No, she's not. Because there's 10 years between me and her, and I'm one of the youngest millennials. So don't even come with it. Yeah. So you've got to know who your parent community is, who your student community is, and who your potential governor community is as well.
And that's all part of your almost your stakeholder plan.
Yes.
You've got to have a plan, and if that plan includes communicating with your stakeholder community in different ways, then so be it.
And that's why, going back to what you mentioned about the TV ads, the only way you can perfect your ad and your communication and your reach with your target audience is by doing it over and over again.
Absolutely.
And you make subtle changes. And things that don't work, you let go of, and you are open to trying them, and not just trying them in one season or one term. You try them across an entire academic year, or what worked 5 years ago wouldn't work now, or what didn't work 5 years ago could work now.
Absolutely.
So it's about being able to look at that and don't just think, we put a tweet out.
Yeah. That's like I remember saying to somebody when they wrote a book, and they were saying, okay, I want to get it out there now. I'll say, okay, so what's your marketing budget like? And they're like, marketing.
Yeah.
And then, so what are you going to do with this book? How are people going to find you? I said, it's the equivalent of walking into Waterstones and putting your book on the shelf and expecting people to find it.
But you ain't said where it is.
But you haven't said where it is.
You haven't even said it exists. It's just there.
It's there.
If people browse, and in the day of the internet, browsing is the scroll.
That's the
scroll. And the scroll is so powerful that they will scroll right past you.
Absolutely. I always say to people, you get 2 seconds or less to grab somebody's attention, which is why imagery will always trump words.
Yeah.
You've got to get away from writing, 100, 200, 300 words on the benefits of becoming a governor.
No, man.
Because people ain't reading
that.
I
ain't got the time. I ain't reading that.
They're not stopping to read that.
Even though I'm a reader.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though I'm a reader, there's some things I just won't read. Or it's the time.
It's got to grab your attention. If it's in your email, I was saying to somebody that when you look down your email trail, you are looking for either a name that you recognise from the sender or a subject matter that you're interested in opening.
That catches you, yeah.
Because if you've got tons of emails, you're going to shortlist subconsciously.
You prioritize.
You're shortlisting subconsciously.
Yeah.
So you'll scroll down and you'll be looking for a name that you recognise or a subject that you're interested in. And so your subject line, if you're sending out emails, your subject line is major.
Yeah.
And in campaigning,
Yes.
in business, we call it split testing. So you'll put an email out with one subject line. You'll put the same email out with another subject line, and you measure the response.
Yeah, so true.
And that's what you've got to get
Look
more
at the data.
sophisticated with how you use your networking, and what you put on Facebook is different to what you put on Twitter. It's different to what you put in LinkedIn, and
not
different
least
to what,
because of the characters that you're allowed. On Twitter you can post without any images. On Instagram you can't post without any images or any visuals. So you've got to know your platform.
Got to understand, and again, I go back to, this is sort of dragging in my business consultancy hat. But you go down the bread aisle in any supermarket, and what do you find? Choice.
Exactly.
People, it's all bread at the end of the day.
But the bread's always there. It's always there. The shelves are always stacked.
And people are attracted to what they're attracted.
Exactly.
I like bread with, the olive in it, and you're like, oh no, I don't like that.
So that's the only way you can get people constantly talking about it, if you are constantly putting it out there to talk about.
So and that then dips into your succession planning. So even if you've got no vacancies, it doesn't stop you from advertising.
Yeah, you got to make sure you've got the interest.
I would love to be able to say to somebody, we've got a vacancy coming up in January 2022.
And people are ready.
And people are ready. You can do your induction. You can do your,
some observations,
all the observer meetings and all of that, so that when they are finally formally appointed as a governor, then they've got. You've got an experience of them and they've got an experience of you.
Look at what they say about employment. They say it's better to go from a job to a job than a job to no job and then into a new job. It's better to transition out of one job and into a new job, unless you've planned it because that's how it works for you in that time of your life or anything. But otherwise, you've got to explain that absence in employment or something. So the same is with vacancies. It's better to always have someone leave a seat and you fill the seat rather than they leave a seat and you're empty, constantly trying to look, and then you end up picking something that doesn't fit the seat. But it's just because you just want to fill it.
It's just harder. So instead of making life harder for yourself, it's to plan. You plan the work and you work the plan.
Okay, so on the flip side though, just like how do you talk about being a governor, is governance, I don't know, sexy enough to be talked about all the time? Are people interested in it at any time of the year? Have you ever felt, and this may be a bit of a question, because a loaded question, because I definitely have felt this way, that as a governor sometimes you're seen as that's all you do
to the school. As a clerk as well, sometimes I want to say to my schools, you're not paying me full time.
As a clerk, governor, you're not paid at all.
I'll get emails from certain individuals, shall I say, within the school, and it's like, oh Sharon, can you do this, and oh Sharon, this policy needs, and I'm thinking, do you think I work full time for you guys? No, exactly. And equally with governance,
sometimes the emails just feel like I'm only seen as a governor, so therefore I should be available on that day at that time. And I should be able to do this thing over here. It's not everyone, but sometimes it's the lack of consideration that I have other things, other commitments, other responsibilities, other roles.
Absolutely. I went through 7 years of being a parent governor, and I can't say I knew what other people around the table did as a day job.
But there you go. That's an issue.
Because there really isn't the space or time, unless you sort of connect with somebody and you may have a vibe, how's work going, what is it that you do, before the start of a meeting or whatever, but there's no real space to
truly get to know
truly get to know somebody. And you never know. To me, that is a completely untapped network.
Yeah, of course.
Now the head usually knows.
Yeah.
And the chair would usually know.
Maybe
I think,
from
because
you
from the
apply
application and all of that. But rarely, again, this is in my experience. It may be different in some schools, but I've clerked or governed in a lot of schools, and I don't remember a time where governors had the opportunity or created the space to have almost like a networking kind of, I don't even know what you would call it.
I think it's left to the governors to organise things like that. I mean, I'm a sociable person and I'm a very curious person, so I will either listen to how people engage in meetings, so I can pick out what they do.
You can usually identify the lawyers because people will
if
default to them. Like,
okay, did you pick out anything?
Yeah. Or I remember there being somebody with a medical background in one school, and there was a safeguarding.
Or you can tell if there's teachers.
Yeah, you can tell educationalists.
If someone is a teacher in another school.
So traditional, when I say traditional professions,
the usual professions you hear about.
But professions like business, entrepreneurship, anything in the creative industries, you don't really,
unless the personalities of the individuals allows them to find out across each other. So I think it's just that. I think it's more the schools. I don't really get it from fellow governors, but it's more the schools, the way they engage with me. Almost, they only see me as a governor for their school.
Right.
They don't see me as Olivia who does this, who is also a governor at our school. So I think it's more the communication from that end. So from the school, I'm only a governor, and to the world, I'm all these other things, and a governor is a part of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's that landscape that you're trying to navigate constantly, because you want to own the fact that you're a school governor, but at the same time you don't want that to be the only thing that you're seeing.
Because it's not. You're more than that.
It's not, exactly.
You're more than that. And the fact that you're in that space as a governor is because you're more than that.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
So it's almost like we're getting you in for the skill that you're bringing,
and then we're saying,
once you're in,
let's focus on this.
We've forgotten your skill.
Yeah,
it's like when mad. I love being a clerk, but no, that's not all that I do.
So do you look forward to holidays then, when term time is switched off?
Increasingly, I'm looking forward to holidays, but you don't switch off.
You don't.
As a clerk, there's always something to do,
right?
Because like I've got on the first and second day immediately after the spring the summer half term, I've got 2 meetings.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I had to prepare for them before the break, and then during the half break, as half term as well. So it's never, and even in the summer, if you're in an academy trust, if you're clerking in an academy trust, what I do is do the prep for the new academic year. I do a sort of close down 1 year, make sure everything is in order and everything's updated on Governor Hub or any portal that I'm using. All my files are correct, and then I prepare for the new academic year.
Okay.
And that preparation will include, things like the related party transaction forms, which you're not supposed to are supposed to be dated or reflect the period up to the 31st of August.
Right, okay.
And so you can't get those signed until the September.
Oh wow, yeah.
So, I spend the August the month of August doing that kind of prep.
Yeah.
And because to make it easier for trustees as well, what Sharon does,
and
I started it, and then it's like, really, Sharon, why did you do this? But I will take the previous related party transactions
and populate it,
and make any changes that I'm aware of, send it to the governor.
So all they have to do
all they got to do is either delete or add information, but all their details are there.
Yeah.
To make, just to speed the process up,
because it can be long.
It can be long
because sometimes you get into the autumn term and it's still on the agenda as an item saying, and there's still a few outstanding.
And that's time bound.
Yeah, it is.
And then you've got all the admin, because the autumn term is one of the heaviest periods for clerks.
You feel it as a governor.
Yeah, it's one of the heaviest periods because you've got all the annual stuff.
And this is why I do like the holiday breaks, because then that means I know, okay, I got no meetings.
You don't have to think about it. Governors don't have to think about it.
No meetings to schedule, no papers to read.
But the misconception is that clerks.
I do understand
anything,
from that. Like I do understand your point in terms of there's always
always something to do. So anybody who thinks that clerks aren't working in August, they're lying to themselves, because clerks are always working. We always work, and if it's not work related, directly related to the school that we're clerking in, it's then building our knowledge, or taking part in training, or reading something that we haven't been able to do beforehand, or preparing for new legislation that's going to come into force on the 1st of September, and what we need to do to get governors ready. We are always working, and we're not always getting paid. Well, I am, because I make sure I am.
Yeah.
But there are so many clerks who, because a school's attitude is out of sight, out of mind, really, in terms of, well, they're not here, and there's no meetings, so what could they possibly be doing?
So that's something that we could probably discuss in a future agenda item, in terms of like, all the different players. Maybe we can take each player and look at it, because just like how we started this episode on basically the world of education governance and how it's not talked about, it's not talked about enough, so therefore elements of it are still taboo, or elements of it are still misunderstood, or elements of it make it less attractive for people to even consider, or they don't even know it's an option.
Absolutely.
There's people out there who don't think that they would make a good governor, and yet you're looking at them and you're hearing about them and thinking you would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So, or there's people who are coming out of their professions in whatever industries and looking for something to do that's completely different to what they've done before, and they've not heard of this unless they speak to the right person at the right time. So yeah, I definitely feel like
I think we need
to go on.
Sorry, I'll save it for my takeaway.
Oh, right, okay. So I definitely feel like I think I think I'm leading into the takeaway. So probably my takeaway would be increased communication about it. Like that's clearly what's come out of this. We need to talk about education governance more, school governance more, academy governance more. You need to put it out there. We need to see it.
Yeah.
It needs to be more visible, so that it's not something that's under the radar or unknown, because then otherwise you turn up to or you apply to schools and then you feel like the odd one out, because the only people that are coming in are those who are friends of the ones that are already in. And therefore, you don't have that diversity around the table, because people are just bringing in who they know, and who they know tends to be people who are very similar to them. So yeah, that would be, if we were to go straight into takeaways, that would be mine. For it to be talked about more, but also be sensitive to the fact that it's not the only thing people do.
Yeah,
people have their other parts of their lives. So what would be yours?
Yeah, very similar.
Okay.
I think we've got to be governor ambassadors.
Okay.
Outside of the education space.
Yes.
So we know that in the education space, we know where to find governors, i.e. existing governors. We know and understand the school, the education sector. But how are we raising the profile of governance or governorship in our day-to-day lives? So in our working life, if you're not working in the education sector, and you're in a hospital, or you're in a retail shop, or you're in an office, or an accountancy firm, a bank, or whatever,
technology,
how are you talking about what you do as a governor.
Yeah.
That would be my thing. Always be promoting.
So I'd say for people to, if we're thinking of an action to add on to this that people could do, if for those who do have CVs and profiles and stuff, look at even if you've even mentioned it.
There. Yeah, definitely.
Have you mentioned it? Is it in your personal statement aspect? Is it in, do you write it in your covering letter? Have you put it in, you know, the time span, because it will be from whatever period until present if you're still a governor?
Yeah.
Do you include it there? Because there are skills and expertise that you would have gained from being in that space that would have brought you into those spaces. You know, it's definitely something to look at. So if people are thinking, where do I begin? Well, start there.
Yeah.
When you're applying for your next job, include a line or two on it, because it is a part of your
professional development,
and personal development, you know, because you're socializing, you're connecting with people,
and it also shows the kind of person you are as well, because there's a commitment that's required,
and it's voluntary, and
that.
you know, it's your give back, and you're feeding into current and future generations, you know, because it's education. So communicate.
Absolutely. Good. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please rate, review, and subscribe via your preferred streaming platform. The Governor's Podcast is a brand of the legal entity Education Governance Solutions Limited, and a free training resource for anyone. So if you know someone who is interested in becoming a governor or a trustee, please share this podcast with them. And if you'd like to get in touch with us directly with questions or comments, then drop us an email at thegovernorspodcast@gmail.com.
You can also follow us on social media platforms at The Governor's Podcast. Let's connect.